Welcome to the 4 Habits podcast, where we help you build relationships that thrive at home, at work, and in life. We're Dr. Andrea and John Taylor-Cummings, and every week we bring you actionable insights to create meaningful connections and lasting success. So let's dive in.
Today, we're having that all-important conversation about how do we do relationships well after separation and divorce. Sometimes those situations can get so high-pressured, high-tense, lots of stress and conflict. How do we go on to co-parent well after separation and divorce? And with us in the studio today, we're delighted to welcome Trina Nudson to share her expertise. Trina, thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're looking forward to diving into the conversation. But as our audience knows, before we go in, we have to give you your proper introduction. So, John, can you take us through the bio?
Absolutely. People need to know who they're hearing from, what the context is. So let me do this bit. Right. So Trina Nudson has spent almost 25 years standing with children and families in the middle of life's hardest seasons. As a Kansas-based family law attorney, a mediator, a parent coordinator, and a social worker, she knows firsthand how conflict can leave deep marks on both adults and kids. And that is why she founded the Layne Project, a space where innovative, scalable systems like BeH2O, and we're going to be talking about that shortly, a co-parenting program, and BeAligned, an AI-powered communication tool, are transforming the way that parents navigate separation and shared responsibility. What sets Trina apart is her ability to blend professional rigor with deep compassion. She isn't just reshaping how families move through conflict, she's reimagining the systems around them so that children can grow up with more peace, security, and hope. Now, whether working with courts, with professionals, or with families directly, Trina is showing us all that healthy relationships, even in broken places, are possible. And that's why we love having her on the show, because it's so aligned with the work that we're doing here as well.
Absolutely.
Now, Trina, you've been at the front line of family breakdown for nearly 25 years, and I'm checking the number here. What is the passion that drives you for this work?
The passion that ultimately drives me is it wasn't until about 10 years ago that I actually saw the value of seeing people. So my why has always been safeguarding childhoods. It's always been my guiding force. But standing in court representing children, I would advocate for what I believe to be in their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
I would meet with parents and say, why would you do this to your kids? And unfortunately, they would leave my office more dysregulated than they entered because they felt shamed. They felt blamed. And when I started seeing parents as people that had their own needs, obstacles, and challenges, people that weren't doing this in spite of their kids, but for their kids, the transformation was unstoppable. And as I saw them change, I truly started to achieve my mission of safeguarding childhoods. And it wasn't in the courtroom. It was outside of the courtroom.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so many parents that we have seen and spoken to as well who, if challenged to say, have you thought about the impact on your kids? And they will say, of course we have. We didn't take this.
The first thing
Exactly. We didn't take this decision lightly. We just realized that we got to the point where we figured we can't do this together. We've got to do something differently. It's then how you manage that, how you handle that makes all the difference.
And it's interesting that you said it's happened not inside the courtroom, but outside the courtroom, because as others have argued, the courtroom is set up for legal battle to really pitch people against each other and create more tension than solution sometimes. What have you seen change outside the courtroom that's really helped?
Well, it becomes once a parent feels seen and once a parent feels heard and not shamed or blamed, it becomes less about being it right and it becomes significantly more about getting it right.
Mm.
And I think many professionals, unfortunately, we only know what we know, right? And in law school, right, you're taught to advocate vigorously, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And we don't exercise that curiosity.
Mm.
So rather than previously in my past life, I was not nearly as curious when meeting with these parents as I am now. And
Mm.
once you're curious, they begin to be curious,
Mm.
not only about what their children are feeling and going through, but what they themselves are feeling and going through, what their own feelings and needs are, and learning from it, as
Mhm.
well as what their co parent is going through. They don't have to agree with it, they don't have to
Yeah.
agree with it at all. But being curious, having strategic empathy leads to more well rounded decisions for their kids.
Mm.
Yes.
And what does that look like? How does that play out in practice? You know, getting curious about the other person and what they're going through, because in the midst of a separation or divorce, I'm guessing most people are just focused on their own pain and
Anger,
and their anger and what they're
hurt.
going
Yeah.
through. How do you take people on that journey to actually hit pause on that for just a moment? Yeah, of course we're going to get back to you, but how do you actually get them to look at the other person for a moment and just think,
Yeah.
you get curious about that?
So most parenting programs, they teach behaviors. And parents are absolutely incapable of performing these behaviors that they're being taught, not because they don't want to, but because they can't. They're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
it becomes absolutely impossible. So we really truly start with shifting their mindset. So I don't ask them to be kind to their co parent because their co parent deserves kindness.
Mm.
Don't ask for that at all. I ask them to be kind to their co parent because their children deserve the best example of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't ask them to wish that their co parent be peaceful and at ease because their co parent deserves to be peaceful and at ease. But their children deserve two parents who are peaceful and at ease. So
Mhm.
once we're able to shift, they're not doing it for their co parent, they're doing it to achieve their why for their kids. Then let's talk about curiosity. I don't ask them to be empathetic for their co parent because their co parent deserves empathy. I ask them for strategic empathy. You need all the information feasibly possible to make the best decisions for your kids. And if you only have your side, you don't have the big picture. You need to go to the balcony, see the big picture, not to agree with it, but so that you can make the best decisions for your kids. And they start to understand this isn't about determining who's telling the truth. It's about getting all the information to make the most reasoned, well rounded decision for our kids.
Mm.
They're able to move forward. So we help them shift their mindset.
And that's really powerful, helping people to focus on the why, because so often in these high conflict situations, our behaviors sabotage the very thing that we're trying to work towards.
Yeah.
As you said earlier before we started recording, that, when we're in that conflict situation, we're never our best selves. We're turning up in our baboon behavior.
Mhm.
So, how I'm helping them focus on the why, I can see, is a really powerful way of getting that mindset shift to get the behavior change that follows. What else do you do with them to carry them on that journey? And do you have any stories to share of that change and the difference it
Mm.
made, say, for the children?
Well, there's one story that is incredibly powerful to me. I had a younger woman, she was in her mid 20s, and an older man, not older, he was younger than me. He was in his late 30s. He was in his late 30s. So there was about a 12-year age gap between the
Mm.
two. They were never married and they had a child together. But the dad, bless his heart, he had 5 kids. 4 of them was from different relationships. So when
Mm.
he went, and he was a black man and very hard worker, and mom was a white, young, beautiful female that was she came from a little bit more money than dad did. And when dad went into the courtroom, he got the typical every other weekend parenting time. He was scraping by to make ends meet. And he was diagnosed with stage 5 colon cancer.
Wow.
They
Okay.
were ordered into BeH2O, my 16-week curriculum. I think it was like November of 2023. They went through the program and he was so angry, like just so outright angry about how unfair the system was. He only lived a block away from, oh, maybe 2 blocks, very short distance away from mom. And he was only getting every other weekend and he was working really hard. And mom was scared in herself. She felt shamed by this man because he had 5 kids and was looking at her like she didn't know what she was doing. We worked for the first 6 weeks on just being curious, not determining who was right or wrong, but just getting curious. In week 6, we were together for about an hour and a half, and they just listened to one another's stories. How Philip described it is we had to sit in our own filth, is how he
Wow.
described it.
Mm-hmm.
Philip passed away in April of 2025. And because of their journey together, that little girl was able to sit beside her dad while her mom was there in hospice, because they were able to see one another as humans. They were able to get out of the court system and
Mm.
really understand the pain that each of them were going through. That Jordan felt shamed by him, and she was scared for her little girl. She'll talk about how she was scared. She didn't feel like her little girl was comfortable going over to dad's house, but as she reflects back, was she projecting it on her little girl?
Right. Yeah.
And so, but they couldn't get there until they heard one another.
Yeah.
And they couldn't hear one another until week 6 of our 16-week co-parenting program. So
Wow.
everyone is wanting these quick fixes, but we can't jump to solve. It takes 66 days to form a habit. It's going to take time to shift our mindset.
Yeah. And, I can see the passion. You
Yeah.
you are so moved sharing that story. I know this matters deeply to you. This isn't just a job, it's more a calling. But that point about not wanting a quick fix, we really need to stay there for a minute, because people dig these trenches in their relationship, these chasms over time, and then think that separation or divorce or ending this quickly will solve the pain, and it doesn't. Can you speak to that some more, what you've seen, and preparing people for what they really need to go through to make things work better, even if they separate and divorce?
Yeah. One of the biggest lessons I have learned isn't through working with co-parents at all. To be honest, I opened my law firm and my social service agency in 2008, and I knew not a thing about how to run a business. Not a thing at all. They didn't teach me it in the School of Social Welfare at all. They certainly didn't teach me it in law school. So I learned through the School of Hard Knocks. I've fallen down more times than I can count. I have gone to countless workshops. I've read numerous entrepreneurial books. I've been to many incubators, et cetera, et cetera. Every time I get more information about how to run a business, I've improved my ability to co-parent, teaching
Wow.
co-parents.
Mhm.
Why? Because that's what we're teaching parents to do, is to run their own business. And that's a co-parenting business, to improve their bottom line, which is the well-being of their children and the well-being of themselves.
Mhm.
And so when they come in, the word healing is a trigger for me, because I can't heal the hurts. I can't
Mm.
take that away. I am not going to work with them arguing about what they argued about last week, last month, or last year. Respectfully, I don't care. We don't have the time for that.
Mhm.
Their old business is obsolete. it went bankrupt. So I'm not going to try to build, I'm not trying to rebuild that, right? I'm trying to start a new business.
Yeah.
And starting that new business about not mom has the legal right to do this or dad has the legal right to do this. If we're building a business, are we going to have our architect be the one that does our accounting? Are we
Mhm.
going to have our accountant do the interior design? No, because we want what's best for our
Mhm.
business.
Yeah. Hmm.
So if we can start looking at this as running a business, and maybe mom is squeamish when we go to the doctor and she gets really anxious when their child gets a shot, then maybe dad's the best person to take the child in to get the shot because then the child is calmer. Maybe
Mhm.
mom is more articulate when advocating for the children's education, and so she's better equipped to go to the IEP meetings. So it's not about who has the right to do it. It's about getting it right for the kids and
Mm.
Wow.
shifting that mindset.
Yeah.
And is that what the BeH2O program looks like? What does that look like in practice? How does that work? What are some of the things that you take couples through, parents through on that?
Well, a lot of time, well, we build their own operating system. So
Okay.
over a 16-week period of time, they are building a new operating system. And so during the research is showing that we're not really having a change until week 6 to 10. That's when the real change is happening. Interestingly, I started teaching some hybrid of this in 2014, and it was an 8-week program. The courts ordered the families into the program. Believe it or not, the feedback was it's not long enough. They didn't even
Wow.
want to come in the first place.
Right.
And
Yeah.
started noticing the shift, and then it was over. So we expanded it into a 16-week program. But we tell them, don't come back to me and get mad that things aren't changing at week 6, because I'm telling you, they're not going to start to change until week 6 to 10. And
Mm.
I'm not going to entertain what you argued about yesterday, because
Mm.
then I can't build your new system. I understand you're having issues, but we have to build the system. And so what's analogous is our companies run on EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. And my first integrator that came into our companies to help us run on EOS, I was paying her. She fired me. She fired me because I wanted her to resolve the issues at hand. But that's not what she was being paid for. She was
Mm.
being paid for to help us create a system to run our businesses on. Ironically, that's what we help parents do.
Mm.
Mm.
Once
Mm.
I started to see the power of this, and God kept talking, and I kept saying, no, you must shut up. And God said, no, I'm not shutting up. We had these conversations. I couldn't keep BeH2O in Kansas anymore. I couldn't. And so in October of 2024, I started training people
Mm.
to become certified BeH2O coaches and run the curriculum internationally. Um,
Mhm.
then I shifted my direct services of the Layne Projects over. I gifted those to a nonprofit. And that's when the Layne Project pivoted with purpose. And now I'm training people as coaches, to run the BeH2O curriculum. And so now I have 11 coaches that do it, both virtually and in person.
Wonderful. And it's great to see the growth happening exponentially beyond you, impacting lives. Can you tell us again? I know you told us when we spoke before we recorded, BeH2O, because the name is powerful, and the meaning behind it. Can you share that?
So BE stands for beryllium.
Hmm.
Beryllium is a very strong but flexible metal.
Hmm.
And so we really help parents take a deep dive individually and determining what is their why, what are their values, so they can, as they parent, as they co-parent, as they go into the world, how are they going to embody the values they wish to instill in their children?
Mm.
So beryllium, they have to be strong by the values, but also flexible. And then H2O is water. Water is very fluid. So when the water is going down the stream, there's going to be a big boulder, right? And the water flows, right? Maybe over it, maybe around it. And I am never, ever going to change their co-parent. I am never, ever going to be able to say co-parenting is going to be easy. I can help them make it easier. So we have to be fluid to make that happen. So then that's how BeH2O came to be.
Amazing.
Powerful name.
And you're saying, so it's a 16-week program, and do both parts of both halves have to turn up to the program? Can just one person do it? Because sometimes they're at different stages of acceptance or readiness. How does that work?
That's a great question. BeH2O originally, as a flagship program, was for 2 parents. And here in Kansas, people were ordered into the program. I wish people would voluntarily come, but it didn't happen that way. When I started to train coaches, my coaches realized it was harder for 2 parents to come into the program. So we pivoted and we started working with individuals individually, and bringing them through the 16-week curriculum. And it is fabulous. It's absolutely beautiful, because what we found is if one person can shift, the whole system shifts.
Absolutely. The whole dance changes, doesn't it? The patterns of
Exactly.
behaviors break.
Are there any examples? And I'm sure you have loads, but any that stand out to you where you can actually look back on a couple of that been on the 16-week journey with you and have just delivered? They've got the results that they were looking for. They're in a much better place. So, and in fact, what does success look like for them at the end of this journey?
That is a great question, because what does success look like? What success may look like for one couple may be completely different for another couple. So I have a beautiful video of Jordan and Philip, who I mentioned earlier on. And it's beautiful, and I have the image etched in my mind. Philip became a very strong advocate for BeH2O before he passed away. And Jordan and him are on a couch in my office, just smiling and laughing at one another. And unfortunately, what I found is co-parents maybe don't want to be that way, right? And so that's rather intimidating. That was success for them. A success for another co-parenting pair may actually be mom and dad not showing up at the soccer game together, because them being at the soccer game is too anxiety ridden. It doesn't help the child in any way. So the cost of them being there does not outweigh the benefit, because we want the child to focus on soccer, not whether the tension between mom and dad. So ultimately, they might decide that mom is going to take the child when she's with the child, and dad's going to take the child when he's with the child. But they're going to send a little 2-minute video of the soccer game, so the parent who wasn't there can watch it with the child. And then in week 15, when they share their co-parenting commitment with their child, and this is in the flagship program, the child knows that mom and dad are okay, that they're not both there, that mom and dad have set this up and this is what they're going to do. And that is success too. So yes, we have a 16-week process, but every family is different, and success is different once we define what are their goals, what are their values, what is this co-parenting pair trying to achieve, and what are the boundaries and the communication that they can set up that sets them up for success to achieve these goals.
So if I'm hearing you right, Trina, at a minimum, success is having clarity over who's going to do what, where the boundaries are, and how they're going to work out the schedule and the way that they interact. Is that correct?
What are the minimum is they have goals. They have 3 to 5 goals in line with one another, right? Whatever that goal is. One of my favorite goals is mom and dad came up with the goal that they wanted their children, when their children were adults, to want to come spend time with both of them. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That was their goal. So the parents agreed on that goal. So how are we going? The next section is, how are we going to communicate to support that goal? And what are boundaries that we need to put in place in order to achieve that goal? So at a minimum, we have 3 to 5 goals. We have 3 to 5 mechanisms of how we're going to communicate. And now we have boundaries that we've created, not out of fear, but boundaries that we've created to help us achieve our goals.
Yeah, amazing. That's really beautiful. And so the BeH2O is a 16-week program. What's BeAligned? How does that fit in?
That if I'm getting it right, that's your foray into AI. Is that correct?
Or is that an app?
It is an app. And
more.
it is AI. And that's where I really wanted the universe to be quiet, because I didn't even know what a SaaS platform was in 2024.
Right.
I was sitting in my office. I had just done joint meeting number 4 with 2 parents. And AI, sorry, I named my AI. Her name is Flo. FLO.
Yeah. We name our assistants too.
So Flo helped me do version 2 of my BeH2O facilitator manual, because I needed to include my brain in a manual to give to other people. So Flo knew BeH2O very, very well. So I was like, I'm going to just do this. I'm going to put mom's I feel statement, or why, into Flo. And I'm going to put dad's I feel statement, his why, into Flo. I'm going to see what happens. Holy heck, guys. What happened is Flo went in 30 seconds through the 7-step process that BeH2O teaches and came up with the same solution that mom and dad came up into in my office, and it took an hour and a half. And I was like, I can't just keep this for myself.
Yeah.
And not every family can come into BeH2O. Not every family can. And in addition, very well-meaning, well-intentioned people in this world, therapists, healthcare providers, schools, childcare, are unintentionally polarizing families because they're only speaking with one parent, because they're afraid of conflict. So they don't have the tools to engage both co-parents.
Yeah.
So ultimately, BeAligned will, in summer of 2026, be able to offer the option for a childcare provider to send collaboration requests to mom and dad. Mom and dad would go through a 7-step process. BeAligned will provide solutions that meet both parents' whys, that the parents can individually and anonymously rank. And then BeAligned comes back and says, with 85% agreement, this is where we're at. Can we agree to this? And then it will send it to the child care provider if that's the one who named the issue. But right now, it's just for one parent at a time, and really takes them through a 7-step process of understanding their feelings, their needs, stepping into the shoes of their co-parent, of their child, and creating a communication that is clear and listener ready, so that their co-parent is actually able to become curious when they read it, as opposed to being, inviting a conversation with a baboon, right? Because now they're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. I can see how it will dovetail well to help them understand just what they're agreeing to and what they're signing up to and how to move forward.
Yeah. In the various conversations you have, and I mean, I love that the AI use of AI there to help accelerate things to get to the solution quicker. But in the various conversations you've had with the various couples at different stages, are there common themes? But what emerges to you as some of the themes that you've seen as to why people they get to the point where they think, you know what, we just can't do this together. We've got to go down this co-parenting journey. Rather than separate, we're going to go live our separate lives and co-parent. Are there any common themes, or what common themes are there that get people to that point, and then they now have to end up in this co-parenting world?
Well, they don't feel like they're true to themselves, right? They feel controlled. They feel like a piece of them has been ripped from them.
Mm-hmm.
And when we separate, they don't just go away. That just doesn't stop, right? They couldn't get along together. Who thinks they're going to get along separately? Mom doesn't trust dad. Dad doesn't trust mom. I have no magic wand or fairy dust. I can't change that. There's no poof magic. It's better. So we have to help them, or the process is helping them understand what truly their need is. So I was in a meeting, it was joint meeting 3, with a co-parenting pair. And we talk about what our triggers are and what our needs are. And we use feelings and needs cards to do this. But anyway, mom was like, I need to mourn. That was what she needed. And then she was like, I can't look to you to mourn. That's something I have to do myself. And just the epiphany of we're asking things, we're wanting things from our co-parent that our co-parent isn't capable of giving us.
Yeah.
And then we're resenting them. So the process of learning to co-parent better is less about collaborating together and more about what do we need? What is our why? What are our values? Because once we have that clarity, we are no longer at risk of being quote unquote controlled by our co-parent. Because once we can find our own values, our next steps are clear, right? Once we can figure out what our why is, then it's not this guy or this girl is controlling me. It's I'm doing this because this helps me achieve my goals.
Yeah, and that's helpful. I realize I hadn't articulated my question very well at all, but no, the response you've given is very helpful there.
And the response is helpful on a number of levels, because I think that's something that maybe this generation in particular will suffer with if we don't give ourselves enough time to figure out what it is that we need and want to be well, and we keep looking to everybody else or the circumstances to give us those things, when actually that's a conversation we need to have with ourselves first, and put those boundaries in place, the time for whether it be self-care or investing time in something that refills our bucket, gives us joy, our own hobbies, things that only us can make the decision about doing. We seem to be projecting onto other people to make it right when we need to make it right ourselves. If I've said,
That self-transformation is actually what led me to take a deep dive into this, because I realized when I was in court and I was advocating for the child, and the court ordered what I was recommending. That was supposed to be a win, right? I won, if you will, in the courtroom, but I won nothing because it was contrary to my value of self-actualization. I was telling parents what to do rather than helping them find what to do. And so once I found my own need, my own why, then I couldn't help but help parents to find that themselves, because it's so amazingly powerful.
Yes, that, there is so much that we could continue diving into, but I'm conscious of the time here, and I want to give you space to tell people how they can find you, and what tools they can look for, what you have available to offer.
Well, you can find me at www.BeH2O co-parenting.com if you're looking for a certified BeH2O coach, if you're looking to me for coaching, if you're looking to become a certified coach, it's www.BeH2Ocoaching.com. And I only train 10 professionals in October and April each year. So it's very limited, the number of people that can sign up for that programming. BeAligned will be out in the end of September for people to begin using, and that is at BeAlignedCommunity.com.
Awesome.
We're really excited about that.
So BeH2O co-parenting.com, that's for parents or those who want to co-parent, and that's a 16-week program. The BeH2O coaching.
And quick question: Is that all? Can that all be done online, or do people need to be with
Yes,
you?
so many of our coaches are doing it virtually, and it can be individually where you're going through the 16-week program alone. It could be jointly where you're going through the 16-week parenting program with your co-parent, or the flagship program is a combination where it's a 16-week program, 8 group sessions. There is 7 joint meetings, 1 family meeting, and then each parent gets 2 individual sessions.
Awesome. And then the BeH2O coaching program, how long is that?
It's a 32-hour core, but then the coaches do 10 one-on-one sessions with me as they take a parent or 3 co-parenting pairs through the 16-week curriculum. And then we have group consultations. I have office hours. We have a monthly marketing mastermind. So it is a community of coaches that we regularly meet. It's not just a core training. You go through the experience of taking parents through the 16-week curriculum with me coaching you alongside. So you're not there alone.
Yeah, amazing.
And just quickly, you also mentioned the Layne Project. Can you tell us what's that?
So the Layne Project is actually where BeH2O and BeAligned are housed under.
Gotcha.
Amazing. I can see you've been very strategic in organizing both the service that you offer and the reach of that service. So, we really enjoy the conversation, and we wish you well in helping people find their better selves after separation and divorce so they can co-parent well and build stronger relationships. Thank you for joining us on the program, Trina.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe, and we'll see you next time.